Home are almost sold out. Get your ticket now.
Trust the local knowledge of the Local 3 Storm Alert team.
We always enjoy watching Nancy Cogar walk through our door and into the studio. She, of course, is an elder law attorney here in town. Good to see you.
Always nice to see you.
You kind of have this unique gift of being able to take uncomfortable conversations and make them easy to have. But I think you're tackling a doozy today.
You know, I appreciate that because so many of these issues as you age are so complex, yet we try to avoid them. So I'm trying to make them more understandable, more digestible so that everyone's prepared. That really feels good when I know they're better prepared.
Preparation is a big part of it, and so over our time together we've talked about how to prepare an estate, how to make sure that you've got power of attorney, all the types of things that you need to do. But then comes the moment where you lose someone you love.
Absolutely.
And that's hard.
And I get people calling me all the time saying, what do I do? And I think sometimes the most obvious is the least road taken. Grieve. Grieve. You've lost a loved one. There are a lot of other things that you need to do, but that really is the first.
Okay, so when you say you want to talk about what to do when a loved one dies, this kind of goes back then, it sounds like, to the kind of holistic approach that you take with the clients you have. You're looking at them as people first. Is that
imagine
right?
that. Yeah. And I'm not saying avoid any kind of important tasks that are ahead, but I think sometimes people think that they need to rush to, the probate court or rush to distributing assets. That process is very slow. So I think, yes, once someone passes away, you have to move through the memorial service or whatever they have planned, and then you need to meet with me and find those estate planning documents, if there are any, and we set a course together because it's a long road.
Right.
I mean, whether it's no will or there is a will or there's a trust, there are going to be some specific things that need to be done. And the reason I wanted to bring up this topic too today, Julie, is because a lot of times, I know this won't be any surprise, but family members aren't good at communicating with one another.
Yeah.
And that is just ripe for disputes. And the last thing you want after someone passes away is everybody at each other's throats thinking one person is doing something that's not right for the others.
Right.
So,
I always have this way, I'm sad to say, of turning it back into my life, but I do it
That's okay.
for the purpose of an example, not because I'm trying to make it about me, but I talk about our mom all the time. I have 3 older brothers, so there are 4 of us who we talk almost daily.
That's great.
Now.
That is great.
But each of the 4 of us has our own unique personality, and when things are tense, when there are decisions to be made, you really get to see how each of you truly operates.
Absolutely.
And if you're trying to make a decision with emotion leading you, you're going to be sorry.
Yeah, and that's what leads to additional expense, tension. It can fracture relationships really for the remainder of your life. And that's the last thing you want.
Okay, so let's go back to what you said. You said the first thing you would tell people is grieve. So let's say that it's a situation where it's a spouse that has died, but you do have adult children. And those adult children are trying to maybe guide the remaining parent on what to do. But they aren't going to understand life from the parent's perspective.
Right.
Is that where you are trying to encourage people to put a pause on it a little bit?
Yeah, I think overall, because we have blended families that come in, like you mentioned, everybody's got a different idea of what needs to happen next. There is a route that you take, and it is important, critical to marshal those assets or gather assets together because they can go missing. You don't want family members coming in and helping themselves to this or that, and it's just a lot harder to get it back after that. So I think it's setting a tone, like a calm tone of, yes, we've lost this loved one, honor them, and then move forward as the leader that your loved one selected you to be.
Okay, so let's talk about your role in all of that, because I would imagine the ideal situation is that somebody has come to you years before this to kind of establish a trust and a will and a plan of action to avoid this very thing.
Right. And that's always the best, especially when, I know what the plan is. I talked with that person. I knew what they wanted. And most of the time when I talk with people, they want to avoid a big burden for their family, and they want to avoid disputes with their children. They want to protect maybe a child that has a special need. And you do that with orderly kind of administration. So yes, I think that there are things to do, but I think that it's important to have someone like me with you because it is complex. There are things that you really don't realize need to be done, and it's better to have that advocate with you. There are tax issues, there are exemption issues, there are all kinds of things.
Okay, and then obviously if it was a situation I laid out where it's a spouse that has died, the remaining spouse is going to need at some point to come back and redo his or her will, right?
Absolutely. And if you have more traditional families, sometimes I have spouses that have been married 50, 60 years. And then when they lose someone, can you imagine? I mean, that's a lifetime. That's a lifetime for me. And maybe they didn't do any of those things that spouse did.
Right.
So it is. You need someone to walk alongside you during those times. Especially updating estate planning, but moving through the process. A lot of those assets between spouses are joint. So sometimes there's not a lot that you have to do in court, but there's still real life kind of adjustments and planning that has to be done.
So you can hear Nancy on a weekly podcast that she has called Boomer Time with Nancy Cogar, and then we're going to share with you her contact information, because the engaging way she has with us when she's here on the show is how she really is, only for an even longer period of time with you. So she will get to know who you are and what you want. NancyCogar.com, 596-7220. Thanks.
You're the best.
I just can't thank you enough for making me a part of this group.
Look, Jed, we've all been there. Just call Medicare Misty.
I'd like to welcome